My sprockets have done 44,000 kilometres and it's time to change them. My bike takes a 520 chain and I've decided to use a clip type joiner. This means I don't have to have any special tools to put the chain together. I've used clip joiners on all my bikes since the early 70s and I've never had a problem with them. But don't take advice from me, I'm just a backyard tinkerer. This is the obvious way to tell that your sprockets are rooted. The chain moves a lot on the sprocket. Look at how much I can pull the chain away from the sprocket. There shouldn't be any movement at all if it was new. Okay then, it's time to disassemble. Every bike is a little bit different, but my bike requires the bottom linkage for the gear lever to be taken off before I can take off the front side cover. Once that's done, there are 3 8mm headed bolts that, once removed, allows me access to the front sprocket. There'll almost certainly be huge gobs of crud behind this cover, so this is a good chance to clean this out as well. While the back wheel and the chain's in place, it's a good time to take out the bolt that holds the front sprocket on. It's a normal thread, and with the bike in gear, a sharp pull on a long lever easily undoes this bolt. It's also easier to loosen the nuts on the rear sprocket before it comes off the bike. I move the chain around on the sprocket so I can get easy access to the joining link clip. This is easily removed with a normal pair of pliers. The pliers need to be on the edge of the clip and the post. Even though this is a clip type joining link, the faceplate is still pressed onto those 2 posts. But a bit of a hit with a hammer gets it out, and then I can just lever the joining link off the chain. Once that's done, I can just pull the chain off both front and back sprockets. The new chain will need to be shortened, so I need to count the links on the old chain so I know how much to shorten the new chain. Now I've got the correct link to remove, I can just use my angle grinder to grind off the face of those posts. Using an ordinary centre punch, I can punch the link away from the faceplate. It's time to remove the old front sprocket and put the lovely new one back in. Once the sprocket's out, it's easy to see how worn it is. It's almost hooked. The sprocket fits exactly onto the spline, so it takes a little bit of manoeuvring to get it exactly right until it slides on. Normal people would probably replace this bolt, but I'm not normal people and I've never had a problem. So I'm just going to use a bit of blue Loctite and put it back in. At this stage the bolt will just be finger tight. I'll be tightening it up properly once I've got the chain on both front and back sprockets. Now I can remove the rear wheel so I can replace the back sprocket. Because I've already loosened the nuts, it's very easy to just take them off the rest of the way. Lovely new sprocket. I stick a bit of Loctite on these bolts just to be sure, even though the nuts are Loctite nuts. Once each one is finger tighted, I then go around and tighten each opposite nut so that I make sure that the sprocket is seated correctly, nice and flat. Now I can stick the back wheel back in. Always a bit of fiddling and farting to get that axle back in the right place. Alrighty, progressing nicely. Time to get that chain on the sprocket. And yes, I know some would put the chain on the sprockets, then put the joining link in before you put the back wheel back in. But this is just how I do it. Because the adjusters are still adjusted for the worn chain and sprockets, they're now too far out to be able to join the new chain up. So I have to loosen off the adjusters. I do this by doing the same amount of turns on both sides so that I keep the alignment still in the same alignment as previously. And eventually I move the wheel back towards the front enough so that I can then put the chain together with the joining link. Once I've proved that, I can take the joining link out and put the O-rings in, give them a good grease, and then put everything back together again properly. Really important to get enough grease between these O-rings because that has to last the life of the chain. So even though I put some grease on, after handling it, I put a bit more grease on as well, just to be sure. Now a bit more grease, and then I can put the O-rings on the front part as well before I put the plate on. The plate needs to be pressed onto the two posts, so I move it round so that it's on the back sprocket so I can get at it easier. Yes, I know I'm particularly pedantic. I'm putting more grease on the back of the faceplate before I put it back onto the posts. I need to press this faceplate onto those posts enough so that the clip link can go onto the posts unimpeded, but not too much that I squeeze the O-rings too much. You can use a single nut just over the top of the post and then squeeze one post at a time, but I've welded two nuts together to make it a little bit easier for myself, and just using an ordinary G-clamp. And because I want to press that plate on just enough to get the clip in correctly and not any more, I do it a bit at a time. And then check again. Before giving it another little squeeze. Okay, I've got it perfect. I've got the little slots exposed for the clip link to go into, but just no more than that. So with the clip link in position and the round part of it going in the direction of travel, I can just use my normal set of pliers again to grab the post and the top of the clip link and squeeze, and it clips down. Perfect. Because I slackened off the chain enough to be able to join the chain together, there's now heaps too much slack. So I just need to adjust that back up again. using the reverse procedure of the same number of turns on each side until I get the right amount of slack in the chain. With that all adjusted up correctly, I can tighten up the back wheel, and now I can tighten the nut on the front sprocket. I've still got the bike in gear, and now I can tighten the nuts on the rear sprocket. I can do the ones that I can get at, and then I have to disengage the gear, move the wheel, and do the last couple. And yes, you're correct. I'm not using a torque wrench for this job. This isn't a tutorial on wheel alignment, but the sprocket's in the middle of the chain, and that looks good to me. I could also measure the thread on these bolts with some verniers if I wanted to. Anyway, for me the job's done, and don't throw out your old chain and sprockets. You can always use them to make something like this.